Have you ever thought, even for just a moment, that you had done something terrible? Something you could never recover from? Reddit user More Relationship 3868 had this story to share. When I lived in Oregon, I worked IT for the community college. I wasn't getting out until 9 to 10 p.m. by myself. It was a normal day like any other. But by the time I had left work, it was pitch black and the thick underbrush made it even harder to see. This will be important later. I drove through town and finally got to the highway that led from Lincoln City to Corvallis, which was a long stretch of empty highway that ran 1+ hours through the forest. After about 45 minutes, I got to the hill that split into 2 lanes on both sides. I was accelerating in my tiny lawnmower of a car when I noticed something moving alongside the guardrail. Okay, I thought, it's a deer. No big deal, just slow down and avoid the cute little bugger. I was extra careful because that thick underbrush meant each side of the road would be a deep well of blackness that could have any little critters hiding in there, waiting to jump onto your windshield. Well, before I could finish that thought, I saw feet. If you're from Oregon, you know the homeless situation is abysmal. It wouldn't be too strange for one of them to be hitchhiking out here, but it was definitely out of sorts this late at night. Well, I decelerated to about 65, I was previously going 70 plus, and kept an eye on those white shoes walking up in the road. But before I could think, the man darted out in front of my Nissan in what I thought was a suicide attempt. I slammed on the brakes trying to avoid him, and ended up sliding sideways at 60 miles per hour in the opposite lane, while the man just continued to run at my car relentlessly. All I could see was his red plaid shirt and his body as he hit the hood of my car. When I came to a stop, he was leaning on the hood, staring directly at me. The primal fear I felt was something I didn't even know existed. The high beams of my car didn't even pierce whatever this man was. It was the blackest shadow, a void. Then, in an instant, he vanished. Gone. I was breathless, absolutely breathless, shaking. I thought I'd killed someone. I sat in the opposite lane, sideways, breathing heavily for a minute or two. I couldn't help but scream at that point and pound on my accelerator to get out of there. I called my husband screaming and crying that I had just killed a man, but that he disappeared and I didn't know what was happening. I left the scene, I know, illegal. When I got home 30 minutes later, I was still shaking. I got out of my car, ran to the hood, and saw no dents, no handprints, nothing. I didn't sleep that night. Here's where it gets more messed up. The next day at work, I researched deaths on that highway and found out that a man had rolled his truck with his wife and child inside. All 3 died. I highlighted his name, put it into Facebook, and the first profile that came up was a memorial for a man, and in his profile picture, he wore a red plaid shirt. I returned a few weeks later, in that same area where my skid marks were, at the guardrail. Tied to that guardrail was, and probably still is, a moldy child's toy. A rabbit. Something is deeply, deeply haunted about that highway. I'm just glad there wasn't anyone in the oncoming lane, or I too would be trapped there along with that man. Whoever he was. Having an accident on the road like that is a fear I have had ever since I began to drive. It's a relief that the person hit was only a specter, though it is still nightmarish to have experienced such an event, only to do some digging later and find a grotesque history behind what you had just come face to face with. A highway is a transitional space. You are only meant to go from one place to another on it. But to think that a place like this could have such a dark history, and that you might one day might inadvertently find yourself a part of it, is terrifying. The following story was submitted anonymously by a user of the Police One forums under the question, What is the scariest experience you've had on patrol as a cop? In it, the user recounts a haunting paranormal raid that he took part in decades ago. In the 1980s, I was a military police officer stationed in Fürth, Germany, and one night my partner and I responded to a report of teenagers running around inside the American high school. Not long after arriving on the scene, 2 other units arrived for a total of 6 MPs. From where we were parked, we clearly saw somebody looking at us from a window on the 3rd floor. We radioed in and our desk sergeant told us to stand fast until more MPs arrived. While we waited, we saw lights in several classrooms come on and even saw at least 2 people in classrooms on both the 2nd and 3rd floors. Within minutes, 3 other units arrived, bringing the total to at least 12 MPs, 2 MPI investigators, and at least 3 German police surrounding the school. My supervisor led a team of 4 MPs into the building, and after ensuring the doors leading into the building's basement were locked, they cleared 1 floor at a time, classroom by classroom, while the rest of us covered the 4 exterior exits. For more than an hour, those of us outside would tell the MPs inside of the building via radio which rooms we saw lights come on and people looking at us from the windows. One minute, a strange face was staring down at us, and then the face would move from the window only to be replaced by one of our MPs looking down at us, asking if they were getting closer. We'd radio back that the unknown perp was just looking at us from that very window. We kept fearing that at any minute we'd see somebody come up behind our MP and push him out the window. About 2 hours into it, the oncoming shift supervisor radioed for everyone to clear out the building, ensure the doors were locked, and head back to the station for debriefing. Everyone involved in the incident, save for the German cops and the 2 MPI investigators, gathered in the guard mount room where the mid-shift supervisor told us that he was first stationed in Germany back in the mid-60s and again in the 70s, and without fail, at least once a year, cops would go on a phantom ghost chase in that building. Nothing would ever come of it. I suppose that if the building is still there, the haunting continues to this day. Mysterious police calls such as this one are not uncommon, as it is just one of the many submitted to the forum here. Was this an elaborate prank, a trick of the light, or something more unexplainable? Have you ever had a dream that you could not wake up from? An oppressive, hellish nightmare in which you feel impossibly close to something far beyond you? User Hedgehog Luna had this story to share on Reddit. I was 19, sleeping with my then boyfriend at my parents' house in a single bed. He was facing the wall, sleeping on his side, and I was on the outer side, sleeping on my back. 16 years later, I still never fall asleep on my back, out of fear. Since it was super small single bed, our bodies were touching. We were both deep asleep, and I woke up in the middle of the night feeling something is very wrong. Like in a nightmare kind of atmosphere. I went to turn around and hug my boyfriend, but I realized I can't move at all. I got scared and started to wake up more. I still felt like in a nightmare, but tried to be calm and rationalize things. I lucid dream a lot, so I do some mental checks with recognizing objects in my room. All this time, there's this awful buzzing in my ears, and I'm still not sure if I'm awake. I'm completely paralyzed and scared, and only my eyes are moving. So I start the checking. The room is dark, but I recognize stuff. And I see my sweater on the chair, the food I left on my desk from before, and I hear my boyfriend snoring. I feel his body touch to mine, and I feel his breathing. The moment I realized I'm not dreaming but I'm awake, I started really panicking and tried to call my boyfriend. And then the horror began. No sound is coming out of me. I started panicking more and more. I'm literally screaming, but it's dead silence. He's next to me, right next to me, and I can't ask him for help. I gathered all my panic and strength, and I screamed the loudest I could, pulled myself from the paralyzed state, managed to pull my upper body up, and be in a sitting position. I realized something in that moment that was even more wrong. My boyfriend was still asleep and snoring, and I felt light, maybe? Still no sound was coming out of me. As I was sitting, I looked back, saw my boyfriend sleeping first, then turned around some more, and saw myself lying down paralyzed with my eyes wide open, like I'm dead. I was detached from myself on my upper body. I was like a ghost, leaving my body, but still one piece attached to my lower body. I got so scared that I slammed myself back on the bed, trying to get back in my body. When I fell back, felt like I was choking and taking really big breaths at the same time. I was in agony, fighting for my life, and then two shadowy entities came over my bed. I don't know how I knew, but they are female, and one of them is very old, the other one very young. The older one just pressed my chest and told the younger one, she is not ready yet. And it was the moment I gained my breath, I was back in my body, I was able to move. I let out the biggest scream that awoke the whole house. My boyfriend jumped up, scared. My parents ran to my room, scared out of their minds, and all I could do was cry hysterically. I couldn't explain to nobody, so I just said I had a bad nightmare and didn't realize I was screaming. Apologized for waking them up, and definitely did not sleep that night. I always sleep in a fetal position, just in case, all these years later. The idea of being trapped in a subdued state, almost dead, and coming face to face with creatures like that is just bone-chilling, especially that last line uttered by the older shadow figure, she is not ready yet. It tells the reader that something far stranger and sinister than mere sleep paralysis might be at play. I find this one to be the most believable that I have read today, because sleep paralysis is a very real and common thing. Even if it isn't paranormal, it still opens the door to mysterious and surreal phenomena with shadowy figures in a way that most sober experiences in this world can't. The horror that this allegedly true experience taps into is one of the unknown, and of being locked in your own body. Or maybe being locked out. Reddit user O'Malley the Alley Puss posted a story that still sticks with them to this day. The sound of a spectral creature so haunting, it will forever ring in their ears. I was walking home one night from my grandmother's house. We lived in a village in rural Ireland. Granny's house was on the outskirts of the village, so I had to walk up a narrow country lane to get to Granny's house, and back down the lane to get toward the village. My granddad was dying, and the priest had him the last rites. He pulled through the night, and my granny told me to go home, get a bit of rest. I reluctantly agreed and walked home, down the country lane I've been walking on since a boy. Only this time, it seemed weird in some way. Almost eerie. And I never get spooked. I pushed the feeling to the side as my mind was in shock about Granddad. As I was walking toward the bottom of the lane, I noticed a blur of white beside one of the farmer gates to the field beside my grandparents' house. I thought it was a lamb that had escaped. Happens a lot. I walked toward it to investigate. When I get near, it felt like electricity had just entered every inch of my body. The hairs were standing up on my arms and what was left of the top of my head. I stood frozen in perpetual fear as the figure was an old hunched woman in a white robe, and she just screamed. The most merciful scream. A guttural scream, so frightening I actually stopped breathing with sheer fear. Looked into her face and saw nothing but a blur. The cry was ungodly, like a mother finding out their child is dead. The most scariest scream I've ever witnessed. Adrenaline must have kicked in because I legged it straight back up from the lane towards Granny's house and legged it in front of the door. I could hear my granny rushing out Granddad's room crying. She said, "Granddad's gone." Imagine he just passed away within 5 minutes of me leaving and encountering the woman on the lane. I remember telling my elderly aunt and a few other family members about the woman, and they said that it was a friend of the family by now. She only appears when someone is going to die. I thought they were taking the until my father, a born skeptic and very religious man, confirmed the woman's existence. In some families in Ireland, she would be called the banshee. I'll never forget her. Not even when I'm on my own deathbed will I ever forget the howl. Thank you. And now, a special treat for those who watched until the end of the video. A story shared by one of my own viewers, Epic3347. This was posted in reply to a post of mine asking for paranormal experiences for this very video. Thank you to Epic for sharing. Posted this on Reddit originally, months back when it happened, so this is copy and pasted. To this day, it still shakes me up and is single-handedly why I believe the paranormal. Experience starts maybe a month ago. I got a bite to eat and groceries with my family, so while the rest of them went inside, I got the groceries. My dad was looking for his lost cigarette or something in his car when I noticed movement over by the woods. It seemed to be a deer at first, and then it stood up. At that moment, I was shocked, and by stand up, I mean like a human, not defensive. It was bent over and stood up. It was all really indescribable because I couldn't see much, even though it was partially in the light. It was just too dark. At that moment, it seemed to have walked away, but slowly. It was so quiet, unlike anything deer or human. After that, I paused and said, "What the hell?" My dad said, "Huh?" I told him there was just a man in our yard, even though it was clearly not. We ran over to see, and there was nothing. Even though it was fairly cleared over by that part of the woods, just so y'all know, I live in a semi-small town, maybe like 1,000 residents in North Georgia, and no, not in the Appalachians. I told everybody about it, kind of joked about it to hide the fact that I saw something fairly frightening. Obviously it got shrugged off, that I just saw a normal deer, maybe man. Figure was around 5'10", I'm honestly not sure. But I've seen stuff like this before, like bobbing eyes in the dark with my brother. The range of the eyes was from 4 feet to 6 feet away, and we just couldn't seem to illuminate the figure. My sibling relayed my story at their work, and one of their coworkers flipped out. They explained that they had seen a deer standing up and walking around in her yard too. She panicked and ran inside of her house. But, went to go see it again, the deer thing had climbed over the fence. Not jumped, climbed. Also, her brother saw it, just walking like a human around the yard later that night, and just couldn't describe it. Filled him with this immense sense of dread. I can't verify. We'll just have to take their word for it. The coworker and her brother live about 10 blocks away from mine, and she's a nice, genuine person, so there's no reason to suspect that she's just messing with me. That's all for now. Feel free to ask questions or call Cap. Sorry it's not well described, maybe, but I'm still shooken up a lot. This kind of horror involving rural cryptid sightings always tend to get me. I've heard other stories about the so-called not deer, which are usually associated with the Appalachian Mountains and surrounding area, but like this person said, there is no real way to verify the existence of these creatures. We'll simply have to take their word for it. It's so unnatural the way the creature supposedly moves, standing up and climbing over fences. I think the scariest part is not the fact that this creature is posing as a deer, allegedly, but that it runs away after being sighted. Because, to me, that implies that it knows that people are not meant to see it that way. That it itself knows it is completely unnatural. Thank you all for listening to this video. I hope you enjoyed and maybe got a chill out of one of these. Obviously, many or even all of these may not be real. There's no way to know for sure. However, I find that what matters the most with these stories is the idea that they provoke. that something else may be out there coexisting with us, something unexplainable, mischievous, and sinister.